Hi guys. Today, I'm going to explain a 2019 Korean mystery thriller movie called The Culprit. A man who seeks retribution for his murdered wife, takes matters into his own hand and tracks down the culprit. But, instead of justice that he needs, a bitter truth is waiting for him at the end. What dark truth will he find? Let's find out together. Lee is a loving husband, who loves his newlywed wife with his entire heart. But tonight disaster strikes, as he sits powerlessly on the stairs in front of his apartment door. Hearing about this, his best friend who lives not far from there, Kim, quickly runs there. When Kim approaches Lee's apartment area, he is shocked that it has been turned into a crime scene. As the policemen and the detectives do their investigation, Kim goes inside and is petrified by a lifeless lady on a bed, covered in blood. Shocked by what he just sees, he tries to find Lee but is cast out by the police for making a ruckus. Just outside the apartment, he finally finds Lee, who still can't accept the truth that some unknown person has just killed his lovely wife. 2 weeks have gone by, accompanied by friends and family. Lee has just finished the burial ceremony of his wife. Suddenly, the police appear and arrest Kim with the suspicion of killing Lee's wife. But Lee doesn't believe it, since Kim is his most trusted best friend. At the police station, the police explain to Lee that they found Kim's hair sample at the crime scene. Lee explains further that it might happen because Kim often comes over to their house since the three of them are close friends. But the police found the hair sample at the blood pool near the victim's mouth, which makes them believe Kim was present at the time of murder. And Young, Kim's wife, doesn't buy the police version of events. However, she was at her sister's house at the time of the murder, thus she has no proof that his husband was there. The heavy rain that evening also rendered the CCTV footage from the area around the crime scene useless. Kim's text messages were also discovered by authorities thanks to the telecommunications company's log. Kim was the last known individual to have communication with the victim. They are just interrogating Young by herself because she is a suspect as well. She was being questioned by police who indicated that clues pointed to a possible love affair. They further claim that the victim's phone has gone missing and that the killer could be a family member or close friend. Young doesn't buy it because his husband set up the victim with Lee in the first place, despite their strong friendship in college. However, she suspected something was amiss after the police showed her the text message exchanged by her husband and the victim. After her interrogation concludes, Young confronts her husband with the evidence the authorities presented. It was the day of the murder, and they had a heated argument. Kim, it seems, visited the victim soon after the battle ended. Kim claims he merely dropped by to get some counsel, given their close relationship. He claims to have seen someone suspicious at the site, but warns against disclosing this information to anybody, including his lawyer, lest they inadvertently prove his presence at the homicide. He asks Young to put her faith in him, assuring her that everything is not as it seems. Quite some time has gone. In fact, it has been 5 months since the murder. In this case, the police are the ones to contact Lee. He is contacted and told to come to the police station to get his wife's possessions. Kim's murder conviction is final, and he has been found guilty of killing his ex-girlfriend. His temper flares up as he picks up his wife's possessions and he discovers evidence from the investigation. After first preventing him from taking the entire box, the cops eventually gave up and allowed him to have what he wanted. Afterward, he returns to his motel. The two of them meet outside the motel, where he works as a mechanic. In spite of her repeated calls, he continues to ignore her. She begs him at the door to let her in and knocks. Since the incident, he has avoided returning to his flat, despite her repeated attempts to meet him there. Eventually, he opened the door for her. She urges Lee to help Kim with his appeal by testifying on his behalf in court. But now he's uncertain and won't make up his mind. His mind has been mulling over this for the past 5 months, but he still can't make up his mind. Young tears and begs him once more. Lee feels agitated, fearing that he may soon lose both his wife and his best friend. He may still believe Kim is innocent, but he has no way of knowing. When Young continues to press him, he gets furious and kicks her out. Lee decided to get back to his apartment. His place of residence looks like it did on the day of the murder, untampered with. The interior furnishings have not been cleaned up yet. The bloodstain from his wife's attack is still on the carpet and the mattress. He straightens up the place, washes the sheets, and mops the floor where there was blood. The intensity of his feelings overwhelms him, and he breaks down in tears. The next day, he visits a convenience store in the area to get some boxes. As he is leaving the school, he passes by where Young is waiting to pick up her daughter from kindergarten. She gets into a fight with the other mothers for no apparent reason. As soon as her daughter arrives, one of the other mothers begins hitting her. The thought of this infuriates Young. As a result of her daughter's tears, though, she leaves. Back at his place, he settles in. As he begins to nod off on a desk, he hears a fumble at the door. He runs out and immediately grabs the stranger. When asked his name, the stranger apologizes and says he mistook the building for being empty before fleeing. Lee limps back inside, blood dripping from his hand. Using the towel to dry his hands, he had an epiphany. He takes a picture from the evidence box and tries to place the towel rack in the scene. Through seeing the state of the towel rack at the time of the murder, he comes to a realization. Because of this, he is inspired to revisit the case of his wife's murder. He studies every photo in the case box, absorbs every detail, and then recreates the crime scene as accurately as possible. Then, he tries to replay every incident to determine what truly occurred that night. Jung plans to see him the next day. She had a panic attack when she discovered the fake blood on the bed. Lee tells her that he fashioned it himself and that he is attempting to reconstruct the crime scene. He tells her he has to know the truth so he can move on with his life. Having strong feelings of animosity or compassion, he exhibits to her the results of his preliminary investigation. His wife's underwear were on a towel rack, but he hid it before he killed her. Kim would have changed the location of the towel rack if she had stopped by. That either indicates that someone was unconscious for a time or that she was comfortable exposing herself to the guest. Therefore, he concludes that it was not Kim who paid a surprise visit to his wife that evening. Towel used to cover his wife's face was a gift from Kim, and he chose it because of the rainbow design. If it were him, he would have seen the towel and changed to a fresh one to hide the victim's face. There is no way to know for sure who the murderer was, but he is confident it was not Kim based on these factors. The police, however, continue to suspect an extramarital affair and hold Kim responsible for the murder. Lee promises to appear in Kim's appeal court and testify, but he begs Jung to help him track down Kim's killer. The next day, she returns to offer her assistance to Lee in his investigation. On the other hand, Lee is conspicuously absent. She gives him a call, and he assures her that he'll be there soon. So that he can examine what Lee has discovered so far, Jung looks through all the drawers and cabinets. She goes looking in a drawer and discovers a telephone. Lee suddenly materializes from behind her and explains that it is his wife's missing phone. It alarmed Jung. She asks him haltingly why he has the misplaced phone. Lee claims he didn't want to deceive the authorities by burying the phone's many intimate images of him and his wife. He would rather it not be seen by law enforcement. Lee warns her to conceal the incident from the authorities. Then they try to act out the potential murder scene. A little scared as she is, Jung does what Lee says nevertheless. He portrays the murderer, with Jung playing the role of his wife. He has her lie down so he may show her the sign of struggle. Then he tries to strangle Jung, but he gets overly emotional and kills her. In her freedom, she makes a dash for the exit. When she has some free time, she pays Kim a visit in jail. She reveals to her husband that she suspects Lee of being the murderer all along. But Kim adds that taking any action right now would be too risky, since he doesn't trust them and so might not testify in court. He warns Jung to wait to act rashly until after he has testified. Lee's father-in-law meets him the day before the verdict is announced. He is furious that Yong-hoon, the person he suspects of killing his daughter, would be giving a favorable testimony. A part of him thinks Yong-hoon is betraying his wife. In search of groceries, he visits a convenience store. The convenience store proprietor claims to have surveillance footage that the police missed. He offers it to Lee in the hopes that it will be beneficial. The video cuts away before showing his home. Still, it may shed light on who came and went from the store to his residence. Surprisingly, the footage reveals the unidentified man who attempted to get into his apartment the day before purchasing a knife before returning to the vehicle. Lee reads the registration plate of his automobile. He goes to the police with this fresh piece of evidence, but they tell him he can't look into someone who isn't a suspect. When he and Jung ask their attorney about submitting additional evidence, he tells them it's too late. In the meantime, they must await the outcome of the appeal. Lee cannot accept this. He must act immediately upon discovering this crucial piece of information. He then consults with a cop in order to learn more about the car's VIN. He offers him a bribe in exchange for the license plate owner's address. On the day of the hearing, he visits the location. When the mysterious man appears, Lee immediately launches an attack and takes him hostage. When Lee gets to the man's residence, he ties him to the bed where his wife was found dead. When the mysterious man finally comes to, he bombards him with questions. Lee continually punches him until he answers his question. But he failed to supply the required response. Lee puts a piece of tape over the man's mouth, gets a hammer, and smashes the man's knee. Clearly distressed, the man sobs. Someone is suddenly rapping on the door. Seeing as how Lee didn't show up to the appeal, Jung has decided to visit him in person. Someone's screams may be heard the moment Lee opens the door. She rushes into the bedroom and instantly identifies him as the man from the security footage. Lee is questioned as to whether or not he learned anything from this man. But so far the man hasn't made the kind of statement they were hoping for. As a result, Jung convinces him to release the man and provide Kim with testimony. Although Jung may feel that establishing Kim's innocence is paramount, Lee is more concerned with identifying the perpetrator. As time goes on, Lee's confusion only grows, and he still can't make sense of what's going on. After a few minutes of concentrated work, he leaves the room to walk outside and smoke. The man tries to convince Jung that Lee is the real killer while they are alone together. He will help her prove Kim's innocence if she frees him. Jung accepts his word and frees the enslaved guy. Lee hastily approaches the room, but Jung quickly locks the door from the inside. After that, she dials 911 to get assistance. Lee forces his way in after breaking down the door. Yet, it is now far too late. We've called the cops and they're on the way. As the police arrive, the man finally opens up. That night, he went there to put an end to Kim's life. The man tells Lee to inquire with Jung as to why. Perhaps Jung is trying to conceal something. Yang Hoon is at a loss for words, so he frees the man so that he can express himself. Kim has been cheating on her husband, it has been revealed. She is a parent at Jung's daughter's elementary school, and Jung had a disagreement with her a few days ago. The man had been following Kim that night in the hopes of finding his wife. The man lost it when he saw Kim enter the apartment and went out to the convenience store to buy a knife. Kim's apartment door opened and he was not with his wife but with the victim, so he went there to confront him. Jung clams up since she was prepared for this. Kim had mentioned it to her on a previous visit to his house. The police have arrived and are currently pounding on the door. The man cries out for assistance. Jung subdues the man while Lee begs him not to unlock the door. Lee has to decide whether to trust the man or to aid Kim. Jung pleads with him to assist her once more. He need not testify in court, but he must keep quiet about the man's statements to the police until the appeal is complete. Putting down the hammer, he heads for the entrance. When Jung reaches for him, the man stops her. Within a moment, Jung swings the hammer down, crushing the man's neck. The police are constantly banging on the door. Lee feels horrified at the prospect of helping Jung frame the man in order to save Kim. When the cops knock on the door and Lee doesn't respond, Jung fakes a self-inflicted injury by striking her stomach with a hammer. He's arrested once the police arrive inside. Following that, Kim will be free to go. His lawyer informs him that Lee has been arrested for the murder of his wife and that Jung is not in the hospital. Soon after, he sets out to get his kid. While driving, he reaches into a backpack and feels an odd object. He comes to a stop and opens the bag to inspect its contents. It was a blood-stained knife that he discovered. As soon as he heard that, he knew the murderer wasn't Lee. That would be his wife, Jung. But what actually happened? On that particular evening, she witnesses Kim leaving the victim's apartment. Since we have this information, we can assume that Kim is having an affair, but not with the victim. The victim had also learned of the affair and invited him to discuss it. Since Jung is a familiar face, the victim opens her door when she hears her knock. She inquires as to whether Kim was just there. Because the victim answered no, Jung is convinced that they are having an affair. Frustrated, Jung snaps. When she becomes angry, she smacks her and tries to strangle her. She picks up the blade and stabs her in the stomach. After dabbing the victim's face with a towel to remove the blood, she flees the scene. What do you think of this movie? Write your comments below. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like and comment to help the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.